All right, good afternoon, everybody. If you could please take your seats, I'd like to call the Wednesday, July 16th meeting of the Housing and Economic Development Committee to order. It is 10 o'clock. Thank you. We do have a pretty packed and robust agenda, so I would ask both members of the committee and participants in the meeting to keep it as crisp as possible, like apple fresh crisp, not like stale apple crisp, or cooked apple crisp. All right, so there are no changes to the agenda other than there is a potential resolution that may need to be added to the agenda. If it's needed to be added to the agenda, we'll add it at that time, but until necessary, we'll leave it off the agenda, and members have been provided that. We do have 4 members here in chambers. Legislator Brooks is online, and in accordance with our remote attendance policy, Travis is able to participate in the meeting, and I think we are expecting at some point Legislator Pillar as well. So we do have 3 members of the public for public comment. All of you are familiar faces to public comment, so I'll refrain from reading the rules. But you have about 3 minutes or so. Obviously, we'll extend a little bit of time to finish your thoughts. But the first member up is Teresa Alt. Thanks for being here, Teresa.
Hello, yes, is it on?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm Teresa Alt, City of Ithaca. I noticed after the fact that the legislature was putting, I think, a significant sum of money to provide, I believe it was 400 parking spaces for county employees at the center of government. Now, I do understand that right now, you have to take care of your employees and their needs as they are now. But I hope that nobody lets that be considered a long-term solution. There is a general problem in the city of Ithaca that there is not enough land for housing at a reasonable density, and part of the problem is that so much of our land goes to house cars, not people. So I hope that this step would be followed up by measures that would, for instance, improve public transit so that people can, from outlying areas, can commute by bus. It's safer, it's more restful. You can sit on a bus and read. You can't read while you're driving. So I would like to encourage a move toward better public transportation, more walkability. In other words, instead of finding a place for an employee's car, find a place for the employee to live. That would be, I would hope, the long-term solution.
Thank you, Teresa. Just as a follow-up to the Downtown Facilities Committee and the Facilities Infrastructure Committee will be handling some of those. I do want to clarify, I think the number 400 may be misstated. 100? So it was 100 spots. Just to clarify, but point well taken. Next we have Charles Geisler from the town of Dryden. If you like, want to come to a microphone.
Thank you. Charles Geisler. I live in Dryden. I'm
Very interested in the HESIC program, which is one of the agenda points today. A simple question, and it's a little premature since the discussion hasn't unfolded yet, but the deadline for applications for HESIC, as I understand it from the information released by the county, was September 23rd. And I guess I'm asking, is there a contingency plan? I know several HASIG applications have been submitted and are under consideration. If anything further comes in, do you have a plan for dealing with that? Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Next, and the last speaker, unless anybody else would like to submit a blue card, is former legislator Martha Robertson.
Hi, thank you, everybody. Good to see you all. To follow up on Chuck's comments about HASIG and for the public, that's called the Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program. It's a program that we started back, well, I was on the legislature and helped to start this program back in 2019. Since then, the budget has allocated $20,000 in one year, $45,000 per year for qualified programs, qualified applications from municipalities. And David is nodding because I think as Town of Danby planner, I think you were extremely successful getting 23,000 of the 40,000 that's been allocated since 2019. Now, 110,000 over those years had been designated for the program, but only 40,000 and change has actually been allocated. So this year, you happen to have three, and Chuck said maybe as according, if the deadline is allowed to extend, you may get other proposals as well. But right now, you have roughly $30,000 in applications in front of you on your agenda. I think, for an extra 10,000 from the contingent fund, it would be really well worth supporting the three municipalities that have applied this year. I have an interest in the town of Dryden's application, a very strong interest. This is to help move forward development of a parcel that we've been, the word might be salivating about for years, going back to when the county actually helped the town of Dryden to do an infrastructure study about getting water and sewer to that parcel. It's 100 acres just east of the NYSEG, so-called NYSEG intersection on Route 13. It's a beautiful opportunity for a truly mixed-use neighborhood that could include all different kinds of housing, could include commercial development. There's space for a park and ride for TCAT. There's, interest in childcare, et cetera. And finally, after many, many years, we have a property owner who is interested in developing. But we could do a lot to move this whole effort forward if we could take this next year and get a feasibility study done. That's what the proposal's about. So I have a strong interest in that one, but I also support the Danby and City of Ithaca applications. We need to sort of move forward everywhere that we possibly can. And this is a great program that the county has supported over the years. I hope you'll find the money to support all three applications. Thanks.
Thanks, Martha. That concludes our public comment. Next, I'll look for a motion to approve the June 4th, 2025 minutes. Moved by Deborah Dawson, seconded by Mike Sigler. We do have to do a roll call vote today because we have remote attendance. Travis, I'm going to start each vote with you and then work our way from Deborah back to Veronica. Okay, Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. The minutes pass unanimously. County Administrator's Report. Corsa.
I don't have a lot to report today. I just want to update you on this specific agenda. I have had a look at the contingent account. We'll be able to support it. So if you decide to move forward and add the agenda to the item, the funding is available that we can actually support this specific project. I think it fit within our housing need and expectations, so it's a good project for us to support.
Great. I do want to also make note that we will have an executive session this afternoon. So we will need to, at some point, clear, the chambers will announce the purpose for that when we get to the end of the agenda. But just want to make everybody aware that we do have an executive session. All right, next up, Nick, we've got arts, culture, and tourism. We have the tourism program overview, ID 13398. And then the 2026 tourism program budget, ID 13397. Nick, I guess I would ask you to hit the highlights of your presentation rather than slide by slide, if that's most appropriate. And then we can jump into the budget from there.
Okay. One moment here while I get the presentation set up. All right. Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. Thanks, Karen. I have a brief overview for members here and the public, just to make sure folks are aware of what happens with the county tourism program. General goal here is to answer these 8 questions. Why do we have a tourism program? What are the program's goals? How does the program work? Who administers the program? How does staff support the program? Who advises the legislature on tourism? And what issues and changes are coming up? So we'll take those in turn. I think the biggest and probably most important question that I want to start with is why we have this at all. It's certainly not something that we're mandated or required to have. So I think it has to justify itself in that sense. There are sort of 2 big pieces. One is to enhance the quality of life for our county residents. And the second is to maintain and enhance our county's appeal as a destination for visitors. Where we try to focus our efforts is where these 2 interests overlap, and you'll see in the following slides how that works. Oftentimes when folks ask why we have a tourism program, the answer will come back is economically driven. We have a local economy that's relatively focused on higher education and academic employment. So investing in tourism and developing the sector is a way to diversify and grow our local economy. As I believe you all were present in April, you saw the presentation on our visitor profile study from which documented that we brought in over $29.4 million in tax revenue related to tourism in the prior year, generating a local tax benefit per household of over $680 and employing over 3,200 people within the county. We have roughly $750,000 people who visited Tompkins County in 2024 and generated over $380 million in direct spending for a total economic impact approaching $430 million. So tourism is a significant player in our local economy, and that's also, I think, a major reason why we continually invest in this sector. But how we do that is, I think, a matter of debate, and one of the ways we settle that is with our strategic tourism plan. This is the county's plan that was adopted, or I should say endorsed, roughly 5 years ago. When it establishes 8 overall goals. Considering the length of today's agenda, I won't go through them one by one, but allow you to review them yourself here in your own time. Generally, the tourism program works because it has a dedicated funding source at its disposal. The funding source is a 5% room occupancy tax paid by guests at hotels, motels, inns, vacation rentals, generally anything with a roof over its head that you are in for less than 30 days. We will get into the very fine details of the room tax in a future agenda item, so I won't belabor it here. This room tax revenue is allocated to programs and grants that address goals in the strategic tourism plan. And that allocation is made by the legislature, both in the annual budget and through individual grant awards. Myself and the Strategic Tourism Planning Board evaluate the outcomes of these investments and recommend changes as appropriate on an annual or less frequent basis. Here's a little snapshot of where we have been in terms of room tax collection over about the last 10 years. You can see this chart is color-coded by quarter. So first quarter being at the bottom in the brighter green, second quarter in blue, third quarter in yellow, and fourth quarter in a darker green. You can see it was a substantial seasonal variation, which is a known issue with our tourism economy, that many more people spend more money and visit more often during the summer and less often and spend less money during the winter. So we have some fluctuation in room tax collection as well. And in next, what's that?
Sorry, just to highlight, our quarters are slightly different than a traditional quarter. If you
Thank you. Yeah. Everything is shifted back a month from what you might expect from a typical calendar quarter. So the first quarter includes the December of the prior year and runs to the beginning of the end of February, and then everything flows from that. So the fourth quarter ends at the end of November. But generally speaking, that's, yeah. We'll have a report on the second quarter room tax collection at the next meeting. We'll get into the details of the 2026 budget in a moment, but just for a snapshot of 2025, I like to present the budget into categories that don't necessarily align with our line item account codes that we use in OpenGov, just to kind of see at a glance how things are allocated programmatically. So the vast majority of the funding goes into long-term contracts. This is agreements for the Convention Visitors Bureau and the operation of the conference center. And then you can see roughly evenly split between grants, annual programs, other, and general operating support. We do have a small amount for grant administration as well. You may be asking what these programs are and what they include. The most prominent of which is the operation of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I believe at the last meeting you got a report from Peggy Coleman and her team about their operations, maintaining and running 2 visitor centers, doing press and marketing and sales for the county, and also helping generally to attract business to the conference center and other meetings and events within the county. We also support community beautification, downtown ambassadors, hospitality employment training program through GIAC, and Market the Arts, which helps to promote individual and visual artists across the county. So these are annual programs that are set up through contracts that run basically on the calendar year, as opposed to our grants. And we could honestly spend an entire presentation going through each and every one of these grants. Rather than doing that, I'll, in the interest of time, skip ahead. So who administers the tourism program is a question that I'd like to answer here. We have 4 staff within the Department of Planning and Sustainability. Besides myself, we have the administrative assistant position, currently Kristen McCarthy, principal account clerk, Kelly Mosher, and Commissioner of Planning and Sustainability, Katie Borgella. And a portion of each of these positions is funded through room occupancy tax, and a portion of their time is dedicated to making sure that the program operates smoothly and efficiently, and that we are addressing the goals set within it.
Are those percentages the percentage of your salaries that are paid by SDPB?
Yeah, so this percentage is applied to all compensation, so salary, fringe, and longevity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And this comes from one specific line item, but also the 10% that the county takes off
Correct.
the top.
So my position is not in the 10%. The other 3 positions are drawn from that 10% administrative portion. What does a typical day in the life of this program staff look like? A healthy amount of it is focused on preparing and tracking 70 to 80 contracts that are issued annually for grants and annual programs, evaluating the reports that come back on those grants and programs, issuing payments, coordinating with our colleagues in administration, finance, and the county attorney's office, leading the development of the annual budget proposal, projecting annual room tax, looking at performance of hotels and short-term rentals to see how they're tracking against our budget. And we also support the advisory board, the Strategic Tourism Planning Board, by preparing their agendas, minutes, and helping support committee activities. distributing the quarterly Tourism Talk e-newsletter, ensuring that the content we have facing out there on our website and through press releases is accurate and timely, and identifying and implementing measures to enhance equitable access to room tax funding across the county. Personally, I am on the board of the Local Development Corporation for the Ithaca Downtown Conference Center and the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway. In addition, I'm on the Governance Council for the Tompkins Center for History and Culture to keep an eye on operations within that building. We also work with consultants for various studies and monitor state and federal legislation relating to tourism. And in the not too distant future, we'll be leading a long-range planning effort to update the county's strategic tourism plan. But in terms of the advice related to tourism and the guidance from that really comes from our advisory board, the Strategic Tourism Planning Board. We have 18 voting members, 8 non-voting members, legislative liaison, and for 2025, our chair is Doug Levine and vice chair Kelly McCosh. They are meeting today at the Ithaca Farmers Market at 3 o'clock if you would care to attend. Issues that are coming up, as we'll discuss momentarily, the short-term rental law that is pushing us to establish a registration system, a new downtown activation program that the Downtown Ithaca Alliance is starting up through funding proposed in the 2026 budget, revising our arts and culture organization development grant guidelines, and as I alluded to earlier, an update to the strategic tourism plan that I anticipate getting started in earnest later this year. So those are some issues that are on the horizon. You can contact me in this office, this phone number, and email shown here. So happy to answer questions, but understand we have a very full agenda, so if you want to move forward, understand that as well. Thank you.
Any burning questions for Nick? Ann?
Just a real quick one. You said regarding the 10% that the county receives for administration fees, your salary does not come out of that 10%?
That's correct. My salary comes out of the remainder, the 90%.
Okay, so that's paid separately, but it's still paid
Still room tax
from there. Okay, thank you.
Deborah Dawson.
This isn't a question, it's just I don't know who to congratulate that we are the #1 place to visit in the United States. I don't know who's responsible for that.
Everybody.
I think
All of us.
All of us.
Well, so congratulations. I'm sorry Peggy Coleman's not here because I'm sure she had something to do with that.
she did. Yeah, we learned of it through her office that they had hosted some folks from CNN that did some reporting and were considering us in that list, but they didn't know we were going to be #1 until the story was released.
Yeah, so, I've been sharing that on Facebook. I suggest that y'all do the same. We can get some people to come visit us.
Anyone else? Okay, next up to Nick, we've got the tourism program budget. This is ID 13397.
Thank you, Greg. So sort of as a matter of custom, we share the budget that STPB recommends annually with this committee, so you can get a preview of that before it lands in the overall budget recommendation that comes from county admin later in the summer or early fall. Highlights from this budget proposal include a forecast for 2026 that's actually a 2.5% decrease from our current annual forecast. We're anticipating some headwinds in tourism coming into the next year, these primarily being driven by international travel and potentially less academic related travel and discretionary income in the coming year. All of those affecting occupancy and potentially driving our room tax collection down in the next year. We are in a position with our hotel room occupancy tax reserves where we are not needing to draw on those at this time. We're monitoring those closely. Otherwise, in the memo, you'll see some notes about the budget proposals that were received from various organizations and the STPB and the budget committee's reaction to those proposals. One item to point out that's a new item is the Downtown Ambassadors Program, the Downtown Activation Program on packet page 21. This is an effort on the part of DIA to increase activity on the commons through a revamped busking program, street art, and sidewalk showcase activities. This is partly in response to a retail study that they are in the process of wrapping up that demonstrated a need for just more lively activity on the commons. One other point to mention here in the budget is the Convention Visitors Bureau. Based on conversations with the Chamber of Commerce, they've provisionally agreed to keep their budget level for 2026. Our current contract with them includes an increase, and considering that the room tax is forecast to go down, they have agreed to keep their budget flat for the year to help us preserve the program operations as they stand. So that is one other item that is noteworthy. Other than that, I'm happy to answer questions folks have about the proposed budget.
Nick, the increase that the CVB went to hold flat for this year, which is a contracted amount, was about $100,000.
Yeah, between $90,000 and $100,000. I don't have the
plus
exact
or minus.
Number. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think I want to commend, and I've made this statement before, the CVB for taking leadership to make sure that our arts and culture programs and other, programs as it relates to tourism can remain strong and well-funded while the CVB takes a little bit of a hit and has to manage through that. But, I appreciate their leadership, making sure that the program remains viable. Any questions on the budget, which we'll see more of later, but Ann?
I don't know if it's in here, I didn't see it, but why do you know what the factors go into predicting that 2026 room tax and occupancy will be lower?
Yeah, the factors, I think we're seeing already declines in international travel, and we expect that tendency will continue. We are expecting that academic-related business is going to be affected, and actually we're already seeing this in the market with various meetings and conferences being either postponed or canceled. And I think there's just a concern. I'll note that the time this budget was developed was when there was a tremendous amount of news related to tariffs, and concern at that point about the impact of that on discretionary income just for travelers in general. So those are the three primary reasons. If we get into the second quarter of next year and turns out we were wrong, we can bring a budget adjustment forward to bring that revenue into the 2026 budget and program it as needed.
Canada's a big drive-in market for us too, and we've seen a decline in Canadian visitation. All of the geopolitical things are weighing, and they actually have impact. So this is one place where they have impact.
Thank you.
And the inflation numbers are starting to climb. This latest round of tariffs is promising to be problematic.
Yeah. All right, so if no questions on the budget, we have a resolution to authorize a public hearing on proposed local law number C of 2025, a local law adopting the modification of hotel occupancy tax law ID number 13396. If I can have a move by Ann, seconded by Deborah. This, again, is one of those things where I always feel like we put the cart before the horse, but we have to authorize the public hearing, and then I think we look at the adoption of the local law next. So how we take these sort of out of order. But go ahead, Deborah.
Well, I would propose that we at least discuss what the local law is so we know what we're going to have a public hearing about.
Sure. Holly or Nick, I don't know if you want to give a brief update overview on, there's a memo provided by Nick and co on some of the modifications. My understanding, predominantly cleaning up language and also making sure that short-term rentals are defined and well captured and documented appropriately as per systems and collection methods that we need to have in place.
Yeah, I can give a brief overview. As we mentioned, as I mentioned earlier to this committee, state law was changed relating to short-term rentals. First in around late December of 2024, and then finally again at the end of February. This established a legal framework in the state for regulation of short-term rentals, and it establishes a process by which counties that have existing occupancy tax laws can modify their local laws to incorporate short-term rentals as a taxable unit of lodging. So that is essentially what we're doing in this amendment. There are a few other, I'll say, housekeeping changes in here just to bring the local law up to sort of current practice with what we would expect from this law. We do not need to bring this to the state for a change to the state enabling law. So, Holly, was it any other pieces?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah, it just helps to distinguish the difference between short-term rentals and the other lodging that's provided. The state is just requiring registration of short-term rentals, so there wouldn't be registration of other lodging options throughout the county.
Deborah?
So the memo was a little confusing to me initially. Apparently, we have to pass a law one way or another, whether we're going to opt out or opt in. Okay.
Correct.
So this is our decision to opt in.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
I'm going to maybe ask what might be a loaded question, and you can tell me if it's not in here, but does this have any consideration or reconciliation for institutions of higher learning acting as short-term rental operators, or address when Cornell, Ithaca College, or potentially even TC3 would be to rent for non-academic purposes their rooms or define them as short-term rental at all?
Like alumni college?
Like when alumni reunion weekend, sports camps, other things that are outside sort of the academic nature of the institutions?
Well, we didn't spell it out specifically. Obviously, that's something that we can go back and modify. That's why we're having a discussion with the committee about the changes that have already been made and maybe some additions that the legislators would like us to incorporate.
Yeah, I would say we did clarify in section 150-14 the penalties for failure to register. I think that was one of the gray areas in the law previously. Was hard to potentially interpret how to act on that, and is clearer now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the work on this. If there is more to be added, we can always amend later. But I think it's kind of a burning question as we look at making sure that all who are performing this function are following, regardless of their status. Thank you. Any questions? We still have the resolution on the floor to adopt the local law. And so I guess if there's no other, to authorize the public hearing first. We still have that on the floor, but go ahead, Ann.
This says that there's new safety and health regulations that short-term rentals have to adhere to, and who
Enforces that.
Who enforces that?
Well, the state doesn't technically require somebody from the county to go out and enforce that. Obviously, that would be quite a burden, given the number of short-term rentals. I think Nick estimated it to be approximately 1,000. But what they're going to have to do when they register is they're going to have to sign and attest to that they have complied with this law, that they've provided a fire extinguisher, that they've posted emergency numbers, that they've posted
evacuation diagram,
evacuation plan. And so therefore, we're not required to go out and ensure that that's been done, but we could. We would have the right to do that, but we're not required to, because they're going to sign this attestation that they've complied with the law.
And this is goes to the county? And then, say, for the city of Ithaca, they also have to, or some municipalities, they have to also register?
That's correct, yeah. This does not preclude any municipality from having its own registration system. The city is a good example. Town of Dryden also has a registration system, Village of Cuga Heights.
Right.
Yeah.
So will this, for the county, will this be yearly they have to re-register? And
It's a 2-year registration
2-year,
term.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so what we're voting on now is the authorization to hold a public hearing for this proposed law. Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Next, if I could have a mover for resolution, the adoption of local law number C of 2025, a local law adopting the modification of Article 2 Hotel Occupancy Tax Law ID 13395. Moved by Deborah, seconded by Ann. Any further discussion on the topic? Okay, seeing none. Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Nick, Holly, thank you for your efforts and continued contributions. Really appreciate it. I know this was probably a good lift, but glad we got some clarity on some of these items. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, our Planning and Sustainability Department and all of their staff, I think, is here. Almost all their staff is here, or just two? We have 3 resolutions, and currently in our fund for the Housing Affordable and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program, we have $20,000 that's been set aside. We have 3 requests which are greater than $20,000. So there's a few decision points. If we believe that the merits of all 3 of these resolutions are worth moving forward, we have a funding gap. And there's a resolution not on the agenda which asks for $9,900 from the contingent fund to help fund that. So after our friends from the planning department go through these items, we need to make a decision. Do we want to fund all 3? Do we want to fund 2? As you heard in Martha's comments, and Shauna probably will hit on, in the past, we've funded this program and the funds have not been used and have gone back into sort of the fund balance of sorts. What I would love to personally see, and this is just a side note, I'd love to see this program similar to our green
Natural capital
infrastructure capital grant program. And if we felt so inclined to set a cap on it, you know, maybe that it doesn't accumulate more than X number of dollars. I know that administratively, those type of set aside funds can be a little bit of a challenge to administer. But I think this is a way where, as our public commenters commented, these applications can come in waves. And if we aren't able to respond to them when they're there, I think our role in the county, we're really sort of falling short on. And so if we haven't used money in the past, we should be able to move a little bit of that forward. Just my 2 cents. I'll stop talking. David and Sean, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So as Greg was saying, we do have 3 applications that came in between like the end of May and the end of June. And they're 3 very different projects. One is from the city of Ithaca, which is the first resolution. One for the town of Danby, which is the second, and town of Dryden, which is the third. And I think Greg gave a good background of kind of the decisions that the members here would have to make in terms of which ones they would like to fund, if they'd want to adjust any of the award amounts, and if they want to fund all of them, then there would need to be a resolution for the contingency fund. So for this year, the budget included $20,000 to support the municipalities, and we had 3 applications. I do want to note that the town of Dryden did initially request $10,000, but because their project budget was $11,000, we moved the request down to $9,900 so that it was only up to 90% of the proposed budget for their project. So for the city of Ithaca, they're requesting $10,000 to support hiring a consultant to develop pre-approved ADU designs. The city of Ithaca had just recently passed legislation that supports ADU development in certain areas in the city. So what they would like to do, they already have some funding in their own budget, which is attached to your meeting packet to go towards this. So they're asking for a little bit more support from the county through these funds. Do you want me to continue through each project?
Might as well hit all 3 and then we'll go back.
Sure. And then the second proposal was from Town of Danby. So they have been getting grant funding to develop their sewer and water plans for their downtown hamlet districts. And so to move forward with requesting more funding to develop those districts, including the infrastructure, they want to use this funding to hire a consultant to develop the map, plan, and reports that are required for applying for the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act. And Hunt was their consultant that they're working with. So these funds for $10,000 would cover 60% of the professional service fee that they're requesting. And Hunt would also apply for that Water Infrastructure Improvement Act funding on behalf of the town. And then finally, the Town of Dryden proposal is to develop the NYSEG area, which is in the New York State Route 13366 corridor. And this is an emerging node for the development focus areas. And as Martha was mentioning earlier, it's been an area that has a lot of development potential, as is 100 acres of undeveloped land. And they want to study how they can encourage a variety of housing options in that area, develop infrastructure, including sewer and water, and other economic development options through this study. And that would be a request of $9,900, a total project cost of $11,000 with staff support.
Questions, comments from the group on how to proceed? Deborah.
I always have comments.
I know.
So I assume that these were put in this order because this is the chronological order in which okay. Because honestly, I think in terms of how they address our needs for affordable housing, I would put them in a completely reverse order, but that's just me. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be pushing all 3 of these. I think it would be helpful when we present this to the full legislature if we can point out exactly how much money in the past we didn't spend on this program. Can anybody give me that number?
Yeah, I can pull that up.
Do you have, I can.
Yeah, so the total amount dispersed from this program was $40,140. And the total funding that has been made available since 2019 is about $110,000. There have been a couple of awarded projects of $10,000 that were later declined, either because the applicant realized they had other funding sources for the project or because they couldn't move forward with the plan for a number of reasons.
So there's about $70,000 we haven't spent on this. Another $9,900 isn't going to kill us. Okay. Well, then I'm in favor of approving all 3 of them and
Great, so we'll take each resolution separately and then we'll add this to the agenda and pass that through.
Okay.
If that's the desire of the committee.
Do we do it in that order?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so, because we have to approve and then we have a funding gap and then we would fill the funding gap.
Okay.
Did you have something, Veronica?
I agree with everything Deborah just said.
Mike?
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, after we're done, I would like your suggestion, actually, to make this a special, we're treating it as a special fund. We should set it up so it is a special fund.
Great. that was something that I've already talked with Katie about, and I know was maybe on an agenda for a conversation with Corsa and try to figure out how to navigate that process. But hopefully either in the budget process or at a future point, we can look at creating something more established for this so that we have funds available. Was this also the fund that helped the town of Ithaca receive additional funds, or wasn't there something that we did that was leveraged for quite a bit of dollars, outside dollars? Katie, do you remember what that was?
Is that Groton?
I think a few of these applications have been used. One of the main uses of the program is to hire consultants to write grants. So when I was with Town of Danby, for example, we took $5,000, hired a consultant, got $500,000 from the state.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Katie?
It also was the town of Lansing. We funded a traffic study, I believe, that was important for them to attract, I want to say maybe $4 million in development to their kind of town center area.
This is, again, these are dollars that get heavily leveraged to greater impact, just so all folks are aware. First, I'm going to go ahead and move if there's no other questions, or I would ask for a mover of the authorized funding from the Housing Affordability Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program for the 2025 City of Ithaca Accessory Dwelling Unit Consultant ID 13432. Moved by Veronica, seconded by Ann. Katie, to your comment, I think when we talked, is like the gold standard in planning is to have something available for people to.
Yes, if you want to make it more predictable that someone could put an accessory dwelling unit on their property, then you have these pre-approved designs, and they could go and they can pull it right off the shelf. They don't have to pay for somebody to do that, and they could have confidence that that will be approved by the municipality.
And this is, again, a great way to add density where density makes sense.
Yes, and when we discuss this can cut planning time for more than a year for many projects.
Yeah. All right, so no other comments or questions. We'll call for a vote. Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Next, we have resolution authorized funding from the Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program for the 2025 Town of Danby Sewer District Consultant ID 13433. If I could have a mover. Moved by Ann, seconded by Veronica. Any comments or questions about the Town of Danby's request?
Craig, I have just a comment about process. So if we move all three of these, which it seems like we're headed towards, I guess I have a question of, it might be more streamlined if you move 2 to the legislature that can go straight ahead. The third that needs contingent funding has to go to the budget committee before it can come to the legislature to approve that, I believe. Jump in if I'm explaining it wrong. So I guess deciding how you want to go forward with that. Do we want to wait on all three to fund until we do the contingent, or do you want to fund 2 with the current money and have the third one hold for that process that will push us?
You can decide to move all 3 and also recommend to the contingent account to go to the budget committee and probably make the resolution, the motion as subject to approval of the contingent funding, and then it doesn't have to come back here.
Okay. So these 3 requests don't go to the budget committee, just the request for the contingent fund.
That's what goes to budget
to it.
committee. Yes.
Okay, so we would then, I guess, need to decide what would be, which of the applications is contingent on the contingent fund funding, right?
Yeah. So, this was the kind of Hunger Games decision I really didn't want us to have to make, but, okay.
Ann?
Do we know, would you recommend time-wise, one of them has a longer, period that they could wait?
Alternatively, if there's no time constraint on the project process, you can decide to hold in for a month and make sure the funding is available for all three so that you can treat all of them equal. If
Yeah.
there's no constraint on time.
Is the timing crucial? I mean, is 2 weeks going to make a difference?
A month, actually.
I would,
5 weeks.
personally, I would rather move these through with one contingent on this contingent fund than have to come back here and I guess relitigate, because we can either do it now or deal with it later.
I think I would say that the city and DMB ones are more time sensitive because they're kind of a process that's already going, whereas the Dryden one is really starting something that's kind of new. I mean, it's something they've been working on for a long time, but the ADU process is something that's been adopted. The faster it moves, the sooner we'll have those. Similarly with DMB, they're in the process of adopting sewer districts. That's something that is, it's not that there's a deadline for it and that if it was late, but it will delay that kind of process.
Katie?
A question for you, David. So, but Danby's going to be wanting to apply for more funds based on this study that this is going to provide, and we don't know when the CDBG funds will be dropping for the applications. So there could be there could be an implication for Danby in particular.
When's the next BCP meeting?
It's the second Thursday of the month. The 2-week gap is either we bring two of these.
August 14th.
Yeah, we bring 2 of these to the first meeting and have to wait on the third one for the second meeting in August, or we just hold them all until the second meeting in August. So the difference in time is just 2 weeks.
I see what you're saying. Yes. I'm gonna, as a point of privilege, Martha, just real quick, because nobody else is here for the other application, so I want to be mindful of.
Yeah, no, I would just say, I don't think 2 weeks would make a big difference in Dryden. To Chuck's question, what if you have other applications still come in, or are you going to sort of close the application process? That's another issue.
I think if we have other applications, we have to take those as they come, and we'll have to. I don't foresee us having an appetite to fund this program without additional applications, and I think we would take the application and say, is this something that we could fund from contingent that meets our current priorities as a county?
Yeah, if we're going to restructure this program, I think we should do it as part of the budget process for 2026. I would frankly prefer to hold all 3 of these for the extra 2 weeks to give BCP a chance to approve the.
Contingent fund. Ann?
Yeah.
I would prefer the opposite. I would prefer to move the other 2 just in case, it would slow things down in any way since we can hold one.
Which are the other 2?
So hold the Dryden one.
Okay. So let's do this. I'm going to throw something out here. We can approve the first 2, and we can make the Dryden application contingent on the approval of BCP contingent fund?
Yeah, I guess. I just think it's.
That's what I would like to do. Sorry, I keep not getting recognized.
Sorry, I apologize. So,
yeah.
no, I looked at you. I didn't say you. Go ahead, Veronica.
Yeah, that's what I would prefer to do too, so that the city and Danby projects can keep rolling. And I guess I'm willing to gamble that our legislature BCP and the legislature will approve the contingent fund and they'll all get funded. So, yeah. I'd rather things move forward and say in words that this is not a statement of preferring projects over the other. It's just a consequence of procedure and timing and
If I may, I guess I'm a worst case scenario person, but if for some reason the contingent funding doesn't go through, then Dryden, our action in terms of timing and what we forward and when we forward it means that we've already made a decision that these other two projects are more worthy than Dryden's, and Dryden is just SOL. I'm not comfortable with that.
As Veronica was speaking and said they would feel confident that it would go through, I just got this feeling of, well, what if it doesn't?
Yeah, that's my point.
And so I see our clerk reaching for a microphone.
We could always retarget all three application resolutions to the same legislature meeting. It would, of course, have a break for the two while the third resolution goes to BCP and the contingent fund resolution is considered there. Then they can all be considered at the same legislature meeting. And if on the floor of that legislature meeting, it is the determination to change which application is going to be funded by contingent fund, all folks will be there and you can make that determination together.
Katie?
I would just add that I think all three of them together tell a compelling story. One on its own does feel a little more vulnerable because it shows that there's a lot of interest in this program by multiple municipalities to do a lot of interesting things around housing.
Mike, and then David.
I'm prepared to approve all three, and then keep this in mind that, to me, there's still another $40,000 sitting out there, and if there are 4 municipalities that want to come forward before the end of the year and ask that for $10,000 each, I'm prepared to approve those as well. Because to me, there's $110,000 sitting in contingency that was earmarked for this, and you're not going to agree with this.
It wasn't.
There's
it's
not
not
left
earmarked.
over.
That's
So
how I'm
if I-
looking
if
at
I-
it. If
so if
you're
I-
going to approve these three, then I think there's still 40,000 out there for other municipalities.
If I could take a step back, Mike, and just to clarify the funds that they're in, it's not in contingent fund. Contingent fund is a specific fund in which we identify and fund. It would have rolled back into the general fund balance, not specifically in contingent fund. I just want to make sure we're not, I know it's parsing words, but it's important.
Well, then there's 40,000 in the general fund that I believe should be.
I don't disagree with you, but I just procedurally want to make sure. So I think I'm going to maybe take some discretion as chair and ask that we pass the resolutions, and I'll ask the clerk to not put those on the 1st of August meeting, that they'll all three go on the 2nd August meeting, and that will, if we add this resolution for contingent fund requests that goes to BCP, that will then end up on the 2nd meeting in August of the legislature.
May I, to Katie's point, would you like all three resolutions to also go to BCP?
No.
No,
They
just
don't
the
need
one,
to.
just the one that's
We
being
just need
considered
the
for
one
contingent.
that says,
Yep.
yeah.
Contingent. I mean, we can attach the memo
Yep.
as context. That's what I would ask that we do.
The other option is that you could ask Mike if he'd be willing to have a very short special BCP meeting before the first meeting of the month. I mean, there are more than one way to do this, but what I don't want to do is have two of these go and then the third one go and be dependent on
Contingent fund.
approval of the contingent funding because they all have merit.
They all have merit, and I think we all have our own, opinions about which one.
Yeah.
One of them's in my district, full disclosure, and I think is really
No,
important.
I understand, and
But
I don't
think
want
the
to
other
put
ones
you
are-
in that position either.
Yeah, the other ones I think are all, again, I'm a housing advocate across the board, so I think we have a plan.
Yeah.
I want to remind folks that we still have the Danby resolution on the floor. So with that intent, if we could close out the Danby resolution, we'll move to the Dryden resolution. If all three of those pass, I'll ask the clerk to hold those till August, the second meeting in August of the legislature.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll take a vote on the Danby resolution at this time. Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously.
Can I ask a question, Greg?
Yes.
Does Danby have sewage process right now?
It's a great question for David.
No. So they have completed kind of the preliminary studies that would allow them the idea is that they would like to create sewer process for the hamlets. they've adopted zoning that allows basically development that's only constrained by the fact that they don't have any infrastructure.
Right. Okay. No, I was unaware that they had a process, so
Yeah, They don't, yeah. That's the goal.
It should be the goal of every town to continue to expand water and sewer, but I'm glad that Danby's taking some initiative on that front. That's a big deal. Next, we've got the resolution to authorize funding from the from the Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program for the 2025 Town of Dryden Development Feasibility Study ID 13435. Moved by Deborah, seconded by Veronica. I don't believe we need any more discussion on the topic. Seeing none. Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Ann?
Yeah, can I just say that maybe talk to the BCP folks just to see if they have an appetite to have a special meeting? Because I think it's 5 weeks from last night's meeting, that the second week.
Deborah, would you mind as vice chair of
Yeah, I'll
that
talk to
committee?
Mike.
Taking the lead on that to see if
Sure.
we can bring that together?
I can't see why it would be a problem.
Okay. Katie?
I just wanted to clarify from the previous speaker that this program was set up to be a rolling application until funds were depleted. What I've heard today is that we'll be still accepting applications until September 23rd. The September deadline was chosen to allow us to close out all the contracting and everything that needs to happen before the end of the year. So if we receive additional applications, we will bring them to you for your consideration.
Great. So I'd like to move a resolution that's not on the agenda. It's resolution ID 13434, Contingent Fund Appropriation, Department of Planning and Sustainability 2025 Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program. I'll add that to the agenda without objection, but also move that if I could have a seconder. Seconded by Deborah Dawson. This is the $9,900 request from Contingent Fund that would then be transferred into the program expense for the Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program. Veronica?
Just a request for when, or if this goes to BCP, we all seconded, so I assume it'll pass. Could someone who knows the history of the funding for this program to add in a little memo about that?
How much has been used?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, the memo about this year's funding was clear for this year's funding, but like what Martha shared in public comment, I would like, I guess, that robust history in writing, because I think that's helpful. Thanks.
Great suggestion, thank you. Any other comments on the resolution? Okay, seeing none, call for a vote. Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. David, I want to thank you for your efforts on this, and thank you to the municipalities who are taking a leadership role in trying to solve a critical issue that's all throughout the county. It's needed, and hopefully other municipalities see this as an opportunity to engage with the county planning department and really our critical role of being the convener and, sort of help navigate some of these challenging processes that it takes to get something built. So, thank you. Next up, we have workforce development. It's a resolution budget adjustment, Tompkins County Workforce Development, New York System Change and Inclusive Opportunities Network, Office of Mental Health, ID 13373. As for mover of that, moved by Veronica, seconded by Ann. Somebody have the packet page for this one?
It's 99.
Okay. I don't see Chris with us today. Corsa, do you have any background on this?
I haven't spoken to Chris about it, but what I'm reading the resolution, basically, they receive difference in terms of what they budgeted for. So this is a cost neutral, amending their federal aid and also putting that into their program expense.
So this is the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. They budgeted $15,000, and it looks like they were awarded $61,975.
Yes.
So we're just accepting the grant funds, and then the allocation to the expense accounts are below.
Yes.
I think they actually got
Two different grants.
$76,975 more than they expected, so yay for them.
Oh, adding the two together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. That's why we have Deborah. Yeah, I just continue to commend Chris and his team for going out there and being tenacious around trying to get grant money. They've done a really great job. I think this is the second or third resolution we've seen from this department where they have added grant funds, which they've sought out to help offset budget costs and continue to do the good work that they do. Any other discussion on the resolution? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Next up on the agenda, and we have Paula Ioniti. Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure I get it. Please come take a seat. Any open spot, and if you have any guests with you, please feel free to introduce them as well. Paula is here to give us a update on the Sunflower House. Just to level set and do a time check, I've got about 24 minutes max for our conversation.
We're hoping to be even briefer,
Great.
so let's see if we can do it. All right. Thank you so much for hosting us. My name is Dr. Paula Ioannida. I'm here with Dr. Charlie Willison, and we are the independent researchers who assessed the pilot of the Sunflower Houses program for 2021 through 2024. That initiative to assess it, the research part of it, was funded by the county, and we're very grateful for that because it essentially allowed us to do a proof of concept of a very innovative housing model, many of which many of the legislators present here know some of the history of it, but I thought it would be really important to come back to report to you on some of our findings, precisely because there's going to be a huge turnover of the legislature in the upcoming year, and part of what I'd love to happen is some institutional memory regarding this program, particularly as we're looking to scale it and expand it. I want to say that something that's not in our presentation, but I really wanted you to be aware of, is that this program is getting a lot of attention at the New York State Senate and Assembly level. And the reason for it is that housing affordability for people returning from jails and prisons is a persistent issue across New York State. The state legislature has allocated new funding for reentry at the state level, but many state lawmakers don't know what works and what doesn't work at the county level. And we've elevated this program through some of my statewide contacts as a model that has been proven to be effective because you funded us to assess it. And this is how it works. So really big commendations to you, but also particularly the reason that it's getting a lot of attention at the state level is because there are many models in urban cities, very few models for small-scale rural counties. And that is where there's a big gap currently of no kind of reentry housing, houselessness reduction housing programs that have been proven to be effective. So they're taking our model and wanting to think about both funding it, but also scaling it in other rural or mixed rural-urban counties, okay? So I was blessed to work on this project with Dr. Charlie Wilson, who is a professor at the School of Public Health at Cornell University. She's added an incredible level of expertise on housing policy, which she's going to speak on to a little bit. But I want to say that the entity that supported the assessment piece and helped us usher it through for the last 3 years was Ultimate Reentry Opportunity Initiative, and they do not operate the Sunflower Houses program. It's operated by OAR. And INHS is also a partner in that they subsidize the units to OAR at a below market rate, below what they would normally get even from low income renters, right? So this is an incredible model in part because nonprofits often work in silos. And in this instance, they worked in collaboration to produce the outcomes that we're gonna share. So all of that is noteworthy before we begin. Sunflower Houses is a low barrier transitional housing program offering 3-bedroom units, 12 occupants, so it's pretty small. But the thing that distinguishes it from other housing programs from zero income people, let's really be real. A lot of the folks we're talking about have zero income. They're returning from state prison or from the local jails, or they have a history of houselessness, chronic houselessness in particular, in part because of that criminal history that then provides barriers to them accessing other forms of housing. So you can think of it both as an intervention in reducing houselessness and in assisting people with past criminal records. The thing that distinguishes Sunflower from other programs is that it provides wraparound services. What does wraparound services mean? It means that OAR works with each individual to assess what needs they have, to assist them with housing applications for permanent housing, to get them back on their feet economically, assist them with seeking and sustaining employment. And a lot of what OAR does is help people who have really serious health conditions, chronic health conditions, past substance use, or current substance use conditions, co-occurring mental illness issues that have been diagnosed or undiagnosed. So they partner with them to walk them through that labyrinth of bureaucracy that it requires to obtain those services and give them that support, including taking people to appointments and things like that. I'm gonna pass it to Charlie to give you the broader context of homelessness in New York State, as well as some of the research, but then we'll quickly move to some of our findings.
Yeah, so I'll just provide a quick context to see kind of where Ithaca sits in Tompkins County in the national context as well as in New York State. So you all probably know the United States is in a housing crisis. This translates into a houselessness or homelessness crisis. 2024 was the greatest year was the year that had the highest recorded level of homelessness ever in the United States. And when we're thinking about the distribution types of homelessness that folks experience, this has been pretty stable for the past few years. About 1 in 3 people experiencing homelessness in the United States are experiencing chronic or long-term homelessness, and the majority of those folks are unsheltered, so that means sleeping in places that are not suitable for human habitation. Now, as Dr. Ioannidis had mentioned, this also translates into really severe co-occurring chronic medical conditions and behavioral health conditions for these folks. This is a map. All of this data comes, it's publicly available, comes from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Just looking at the distribution, these are counts of homelessness across the country. And then the color-coded is per capita. And you can see that New York State stands out pretty starkly. And then, oh yeah, there we go. And then when we're looking
We'll share this with you.
At Ithaca in particular, Dr. Ioannidis has flagged this, looking at the percent change. So this is across New York State. Ithaca, Tompkins County has seen almost a 300% increase since 2010 in the counts of homelessness alone. So this is very much a local crisis as well as a national crisis. And this is just kind of setting the stage for where Sunflower Houses falls in the context of alternatives to address homelessness based on evidence-based solutions that we do know really well. So the good news is that we have a lot of data on this. It's more a question about implementation and then also thinking about implementation and alternatives for specific contexts like rural areas. Supportive housing is the best solution to address chronic homelessness. So again, these are people experiencing long-term homelessness homelessness with these really high levels of comorbidities and complex medical needs. So this is providing housing in addition to wraparound services. And so that could mean everything from case management, social services, behavioral health, and other types of medical care. And then there's also a similar approach that supportive housing requires, but also translates to different types of housing programs, which is Housing First. Housing First does not mean that you just give someone housing and then wave goodbye. That works for some people. But the important thing is, especially when we're talking about really high risk, really high needs populations, Housing First is providing people with housing, barrier-free access to housing, so not conditional on behavioral change like sobriety or other things, but then also providing them access to necessary social and medical services in order to maintain housing stability. So if you give someone who has been experiencing long-term homelessness housing without necessary supportive medical services, there's a very high likelihood that they will transition back into homelessness. Also, finally, the third strategy is obviously to decriminalize homelessness. People experiencing long-term homelessness, especially people coming out of reentry, have very high levels of police interaction and cycling levels of homelessness. This is very common across the country. And that obviously exacerbates rates of homelessness. Research has shown that this contributes to cycles of homelessness. And finally, thinking about the state context in particular, the national and state, I did want to highlight one opportunity that the Sunflower Houses program is also actually taking advantage of. New York State has a section, Medicaid section 1115 waiver. The 1115 waivers allow states to apply for Medicaid funding and use it in ways that is unusual from the traditional program. And this new type of program that just came into existence in 2023, it does still exist. The guidance has been taken down, but the waivers are being approved kind of on an ongoing basis. But New York currently has one. I believe it goes through almost the end of the decade. And what it's allowing New York to do is to use Medicaid to bill for non-medical services. So that's things like 6 months of rent, utility costs, medical respite beds, so food, lots of different types of things that can be used to support low-income housing programs, transitional housing programs, and specifically supportive housing programs for people transitioning out of long-term homelessness. So this is really, really
Is that going to survive the One Big Beautiful Bill?
So it does. So this is money that has already been allocated to New York State. So obviously, you know, this is conditional on the tap not being turned off, but that money is there right now. And organizations can access that money right now. And what it's doing is it actually, Medicaid has had staff that's allocated through this waiver, and they help provide new staffing and training to local social service organizations so that they can bill Medicaid for the services that they're providing. And Sunflower OAR has done that right now. They've gone through that process. Care Compass is our regional organization that social service agencies can reach out to get that Medicaid money. And again, because of obviously all of the federal uncertainty, I encourage folks to do that now to at least set up that infrastructure while it still exists. And this program still exists as of yet.
All right, so now just squaring in on some of the things that we assess. One of the things we assessed was recidivism rates for people within the Sunflower program. We assessed that only over 2 years using really hard to get, hard to clean data from the jail. And we found that for people who are living in program at Sunflower, the recidivism rate was 7%, very, very low. I'll go over that a little bit more. The other outcome, which is actually over all 3 years, is an incredible homelessness reduction. So 81% of the people that entered Sunflower entered as homeless individuals. And when they they left, or essentially in terms of obtaining housing, 68% obtained housing. That includes temporary housing and permanent housing, but what that shows you is the significance of that assistance to actually acquire housing options. And over 50% of people worked while living at Sunflower. This varies depending on the individuals there. One of our findings that was really significant is that the thing that prevents a lot of Sunflower residents from sustaining work or obtaining work was chronic illnesses, whether disabilities or essentially recovering from various kinds of medical conditions. So that was an important lesson learned because it told us we really have to provide more medical support in partnership with entities like REACH and our local medical system. Here, we're proud to have assessed the countywide recidivism rate for 2021 to 2023. Again, that took quite a bit of assessment work, and that's hovering at about 34.8%. OAR clients, which was kind of our comparison group, right? It's clients who don't have the housing, but are very similarly situated as Sunflower residents in that they're homeless, they're usually substance users, they're often co-occurring with mental illness. Their recidivism rate was 17.5%. And then, as I said, the Sunflower Houses clients, while they were in program, was 7%. And then non-OAR clients who are, again, who were kind of trafficking in and out of the jail was around 24.9%. So these shouldn't be compared because they are different sample sizes, but it just gives you a kind of snapshot view. Yeah, Veronica.
How is the countywide recidivism rate higher than either the OAR clients and non-OAR clients?
Sorry, say that again. How is it higher?
How is it higher than, I would think OAR clients and non-OAR clients are like kind of non-overlapping comprehensive populations.
The whole population,
but
yeah.
Charlie's shaking her head, so maybe not. So how is the countywide recidivism rate higher than all of it, significantly, as far as I can tell?
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I think this is just thinking about like where the data comes from and who's being counted, right? So the countywide data that's from the jail, right? Yeah. So that's like more comprehensive, it's easier to estimate. The non-OAR clients is a different pooled sample. And so just thinking about who's in, who's out, that's why there's variation there.
Yeah. Also, you can kind of think of them as different samples, essentially. And so the sample for countywide was 951. You can kind of see the sample size in gray. Whereas OAR clients is over that same period, they're not necessarily, right, they're being tracked in a separate data sample than what the county is tracking. So it's different data sets is why this is a bit confusing.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
If, sorry, can you go back?
Yep.
Please, I apologize. So Sunflower House clients in program, Sunflower House client out of program or pass through the program?
Good question. Yeah, we couldn't track that, right? Because essentially at that time we assessed it, not enough had moved out to constitute a sample size.
Significant sample
so
size.
We were working with the sample of people who were essentially residing, and it was a very low sample, 42 people, right? But it matters in that we're trying to, and this is very important, that the recidivism rate is rebooking. It doesn't mean somebody was actually convicted or sentenced. It just indicates for us, like, how much police contact are they having and are they ending up back in jail? And so what we were trying to kind of do is not necessarily compare these things, because again, the sample size for Sunflower was not enough at the time, but it is something that we now have the data infrastructure to track longitudinally, and I think over time we could really show, is the Sunflower House actually impacting the county recidivism rate, which right now we can't show.
Okay, and then my other question is it a fair assessment that someone who may leave the Sunflower House would remain an OAR client?
Yes, typically that is the case. Particularly what we've seen is that people cycle, kind of get back on their feet, they get stable, but then something happens to get them destabilized again. They're back at OAR seeking services. What's important, I think, is that one of the things we learned over 3 years is that there are very different kinds of populations at Sunflower, some who need very little support, and once you gave them that housing and a little bit of employment assistance, they got on their feet, they don't come back. And then there's those high need, high support kind of folks who really you can kind of expect to continue to cycle in and out, mostly due to substance use and mental health kind of co-occurring conditions, yeah. And which is why when we're thinking about scaling, and we'll talk about this at the end, we really are kind of, for me, the vision would be that we have the one type of model that really is supportive of people who are ready to get on their feet, but it's just a socioeconomic issue, versus the really high need, who need really medical and these support services, who we can expect much longer stays, you know, because essentially they're not going to be able to work and get back on their feet at the same rate. So that's what we've essentially
population?
found. The ESHI population is for anyone who is coming back from jails and prisons, but that could mean very different kinds of people.
Well, you know, my feeling is that when we have limited resources, at least at the beginning, we should be targeting the low-hanging fruit, get them housed, and then start working on the people who are more problematic in the long term.
And I'll talk a little bit about that because it's a really insightful thing. So one of the things I also wanted to point, this is calls for service at the different kind of housing complexes in our county. And you can kind of see, right, that over the last 3 years, part of what OAR has worked really hard to do is to reduce those calls to police, right, and really trying to problem solve and de-escalate. You can think of this as a preventative service, right, that's saving the county a lot of money from not having to dispatch police every single time there's an issue, in part because there is that staff and support that they can go to instead, and it's the relationship building that really matters in the kind of preventative aspects, right? I won't take a lot of time, but our second report, and why we're here today, that we just recently released, was deeply qualitative. And the first one is quantitative. It gives you all that county data on recidivism. The second report is qualitative. We spoke with 14 Sunflower residents, 4 of whom had moved out, to just basically get from the horse's mouth, right? Like, how is this program working for you? How would we improve it? And what we found essentially around housing is that people were deeply grateful to have Sunflower houses. It made a huge difference, particularly as distinguished from halfway house models that have curfews and a lot of punitive measures. This was a much more restorative approach, right, to housing. The other thing they said was how much grace they were given even when they did, for example, relapse, had to go back to rehabilitation centers. One of the things OAR learned along the way was to kind of save that spot. They would go to rehab for several months, but then they could have some place to come back, which typically you go to rehab, once you end the program, you're back in homelessness, you're back in using, right? So this is another kind of preventative medical aspect. Having said that, we need more housing. There's very little permanent housing that they can move into at the economic levels that they're at. They're still not usually making a living wage enough at the time to be able to live in Tompkins County and still access those central services. So that's a pitch for continue to build affordable housing no matter what. Employment, again, minimum wage entry level jobs are kind of insufficient for accessing permanent housing options. So again, a lot of the people are not only facing barriers in obtaining jobs because of their past criminal records. URO is working on a Beyond the Box initiative to try to work with employers to better understand this population and basically utilize it to supplement workforce shortages. But essentially, again, what we found was that disability, chronic health conditions often prevented people from that kind of sustained employment, which we'll have to continue finding solutions for. In terms of major health wins, 86% of participants reported using healthcare services while living at Sunflower. By contrast, when they were interviewed kind of, you know, where they were at before, right, many of them did not have health insurance, were certainly not utilizing health services. That's because they're homeless. And that's the last thing they're gonna kind of prioritize when seeking homes. Also, medical providers, they felt a lot of judgment, particularly if they had past substance use. And part of what OER did was find partners that were willing to work with the reentry population in a non-judgmental harm reduction kind of way. And we had, for example, a major win in that 57% increase in health insurance access for residents. And finally, I don't need to belabor this point, but this is a major cost saving to the county as we're looking for efficient solutions, right? When you think about what it costs to house somebody at Sunflower House, what it costs the county, you can kind of think about it as a slice, as a pizza a day, is how Dave puts it. Dave Sanders, the director of OER. $10 per day is the estimate for 2025. You can kind of contrast that to, if Sunflower cost the county about $53,000 per year, right? If you house the same number of people at Code Blue rates, right, you're talking about 1.6 million. If you house them in the jail's budget is fixed, but essentially, right, oftentimes there's so many associated costs with cycling them in and out of jail. So looking kind of ahead, and thanks to Travis, the Sunflower program does have $45,000 through an over-target request, but we really are here to give our recommendation as independent assessors and researchers that the county actually fund this as a permanent budget, right? As part of really thinking about the permanent budget that it funds for OER at about $170 for a year. Dave Sanders has been really creative in using opioid settlement money, applying for this social care network Medicaid funding, but it's the same kind of thing where the precarity of the program is really at the level of the funding, and not feeling like you have guaranteed funding when the cost is so low, right? And again, I want to put this in perspective back to the homelessness issue. You saw that the homelessness in Tompkins County is around 250 people, right? It's really a manageable problem. And when you're talking about 62 people over 3 years, right? With that supportive housing programs, you're actually also potentially making a huge dent into the homeless population in Tompkins County. If we were to scale this and replicate it such that, for example, you had high need kind of housing, right, in these small scale apartments or houses, and then maybe low barrier for people who move through it more quickly, again, it would save the county. I know it's hard to see money where it's not utilized, right? But that's essentially what it's doing. It's preventing all these people from utilizing the social support network at much higher rates, whether it's emergency hospital services, the jail, or, kind of local 911 dispatch infrastructure, right? When you kind of think about it.
So how many people would you house for $170,000 a year?
That's essentially, right now he's operating at about 53 for 12 people, but 170 would be the kind of dream scale, right? Where not only could you subsidize more people to potentially move them through because you can provide more services, right? But you would essentially be able to widen that support service network of things that they need. You're talking about, I'll speak on behalf of Dave, but I don't think I'm wrong in my own independent assessment is that you're talking about a current structure where Dave is very creatively scrapping something together and still producing really amazing outcomes versus what he could do if he actually had stable funding at $170K, which would be these much more robust services. Much of that goes to staffing. Mm-hmm. And the staffing has to be credible messengers, people who have the lived experience to relate to this population with past formerly incarcerated experience, but also people who can connect them to those services, which takes quite a bit of time, right, per individual. So it's really more the services side, but also one of the things we learned in the pilot is that the funding that we thought we would get from the Department of Social Services, like the emergency $400 that, kind of monthlies, just doesn't pan out. There's many DSS sanctions, restrictions, various things that stood in the way where that funding was not stable. So in the first year, the Sunflower program was very, very close to closing, right? Because it was putting OER's reserves into such emergency levels, right? That essentially there was, and only because of that opioid settlement money did Dave was able to kind of stabilize it. But again, when that money goes away, we're back at the same place. And our goal would be to really get the county to see you've invested in something, you've done something well. We could only perfect it from here and get better at it because there were a lot of lessons learned. But essentially, essentially it would create a lot more support.
So it's more a question of stabilizing the service provision and not increasing the number of people.
Correct.
So how many people currently?
Right now it's 12 people for 3-bedroom units, But you got to think that those people don't always stay a full year, right? Okay. So some people stay.
So it rolls.
It rolls, And that's what we found is that the high need population stays much longer than we planned for. We were planning on basically like 6 months. Whereas the low need population moves through quite quickly because they get stable jobs, they get back on their feet, they become right back into permanent housing.
If I can just jump in really quickly on the staffing aspect, I think this is also really important when we're thinking about the context of necessary supportive services. So if I understand correctly, Sunflower only has 3 staff members and basically like 2 full-time case managers who are actually there on the ground providing supportive services that are necessary at the evidence-based level to keep those high needs clients stably housed. And that is a feat. Like that is a momentous feat to be able to do that. But so thinking about employing just a few more case managers who are there every day, who are there, for 12 hours a day, et cetera, in order to stabilize folks and keep folks stabilized, take them to medical appointments, all these different types of things that are necessary for the high needs people.
I'm going to give Travis the last question just due to time. So Travis, round us home.
All right. So I understand the motto. I understand harm reduction. I understand all that you all are trying to attempt to do. I guess my question is the way that houses are set up, there isn't a lot of funds that are out there for that type of setup. So long-term or even expansion, how without the county funding $150,000 a year long-term, how does this model become sustainable? And we know that Asteri and our house and other apartments like that, because we place people in our LEAD program all over the county, and most of them have funding either from Section 8 or from DSS, THA. So how do we make this sustainable without having to rely on the county money, given the complexities of getting THA for Sunflower itself long-term?
Yeah, that's a great question, Travis. And I think Dave has absolutely sought every opportunity for state funding or other grants to sustain the program. One of the things that we're very hopeful about is if this Section 1115 New York State Medicaid waiver allows for 6 months of rent per individual, that's going to be a game changer, right? And similarly, this new allocation of $46 million for ATI and reentry that the state just approved, New York State just approved, and that RFPs are forthcoming from, I guarantee we'll apply for it. So it's not that, that I don't think that, Sunflower or OER isn't looking for every opportunity out there to subsidize this. What I think I'm saying is that many of those state and federal funding sources are under unbelievable levels of disarray right now because of the chaos of the current federal administration. And because of that precarity, and given the kind of cost benefits of this program, but also what it can do long term, part of why I think the county should have a vision to fund it, because of, in the grand scheme of things, the return on investment is so high, is because those other state and federal funding sources are so precarious, right? And I don't know that even putting, let's say 2 years down the line, we have a vision for that. Past that, I think it becomes really difficult to look at, right? Because of the precarity.
No, I get it. I would say that when the program was first initially funded, it was for X amount of years. at a certain level, because we were told that it was going to be sustainable. Y'all were going to figure that out. And so we said, okay, they haven't figured it out yet. We'll put X amount of money to the side for the next few years to guarantee funding, but the ask will be more than that, almost triple that now. And so given what we're going to be dealing with taxes and the budget, I think that what will need to be shared with us come that time is the plan to find funding to make this happen, because the ask will be for more when we're working with less.
Yeah.
So
And
I
again,
want to make sure that you all can be supported the best we can, but I know doing more is going to be even more challenging in this budget cycle.
Yeah. And I'll just note one thing. I agree with you, Travis. There's lots of money for starting housing. So for example, develop private and public development funds, that sort of thing. It's in the supportive housing, this would fit, right? What people are really not understanding is the level of staffing that you actually need to make this happen. And that is rarely provided from state and federal funding, because they're not at the local level to think about that, right? So what I would say is, as URO is actually looking to scale Sunflower for a bigger project with a private, kind of a regional housing, what we're finding in our research for funding is that we can find that initial fund to set it up. But I think it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that people don't want to provide the adequate staffing for wraparound services and for credible messengers to be properly compensated at a living wage. And then they say, oh, look, the housing model failed. Let's go back to incarcerating them. But if you had provided the adequate staffing to really walk people through a major long-term transition, then very likely you would have had the success you needed. And as an example, I just finished an assessment for Westchester County, which is a multi-billion-dollar county budget, and they too found the same gap. The gap was nobody to do that outreach on the street, the credible messenger, to the actual walking people through the bureaucracy of services. And as a result, they're going to essentially potentially pilot kind of one of those navigational support programs to kind of fill that gap, right? But this is the type of thing that I think you only understand if you're working with the population instead of kind of judging it from up above, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Staffing is the biggest issue, period.
Yeah. I hate to be the timekeeper.
Yes, thank you.
But I am. We do need to move on. Paula, Charlie, thank you very much for your work, for your efforts. Mike, if you want to follow up with an email to Paula and Charlie, that would be great.
Not for them, it's really more for you.
We really need to keep moving because we have an executive session that will be far more robust, I think, and we can pick that up via email. If you wouldn't mind sharing your presentation, Paula and Charlie, with the clerk. Do you have a copy or no? Okay. If you could make sure we get a copy to distribute along with the qualitative assessment report to the rest of the legislature, that would be beneficial.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Chair's report. Other than that, there was a great discussion at the IDA meeting. I'd suggest everybody go back and watch about Asteri and the opportunities that the community has to work together there. It was a robust, in-depth discussion, and would highly encourage members interested in that topic to take a look there. I'm going to skip committee member reports. If you have anything to add to the good of the committee, please share that with committee members via email. And then I would like a motion to go into executive session in accordance with Article 7, Section 105 of the Public Officers Law. Executive session is only appropriate for the discussion of, and will be under the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Moved by Deborah, seconded by Ann. We'll just do a roll call vote real quick. Travis?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We'll take 3 minutes. So if you're a non-county staff member, if you could please leave the chambers. County staff that are here for the discussion, please stay. And we'll reconvene at 11:46.
Thank you.
Yes, there's an email from